Coming up on Arirang News, South Korean President Moon Jae-in gives his New Year's address to the nation. In it, he calls on North Korean leader Kim Jong-un to visit the South this year as promised, and he pledges to bring about tangible changes to the South Korean economy. With tensions rising between the U.S. and Iran, the South Korean government is on guard against financial instability. Rising oil prices and other factors, it says, are unlikely to pose a big risk in the short term. And ahead of the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas, South Korea's biggest companies are already going toe-to-toe with their newest devices. A big vision announced by Samsung in its keynote speech there. It's 4:00 p.m. here in Seoul. Thanks for tuning in to Arirang News. I'm Devin Whiting. President Moon in his New Year's address suggested ways to improve the situation on the Korean peninsula, especially in terms of inter-Korean relations. He also reminded North Korean leader Kim Jong-un of his pledge to visit South Korea and called for that to happen in the near future. Shin Se-min has the details.
President Moon Jae-in said he hopes to see North Korean leader Kim Jong-un live up to his promise to visit Seoul this year and called for the two Koreas to mend their severed relations. During his annual New Year's address, the South Korean leader looked to lay the foundations for Kim's reciprocal visit to Seoul, with this year marking the 20th anniversary of the June 15 inter-Korean joint statement.
평화 통일의 의지를 다지는 공동 행사를 비롯하여 김정은 위원장의 답방을 위한 여건이 하루빨리 갖춰질 수 있도록 남과 북이 함께 노력해 나가길 바랍니다.
Along with that idea, the president also proposed more realistic ways for the two Koreas to work together, including cooperation in the border region. He raised joint efforts to get the demilitarized zone between the two Koreas added to UNESCO's World Heritage List, following Sirim, or traditional Korean wrestling, which was added to the list in 2018 by the two sides as a piece of intangible cultural heritage. Moon also called for more inter-Korean cultural cooperation, hoping to invite North Korean athletes to upcoming sporting events like the World Table Tennis Championships being held in the South this year, and even continue consultations for unified inter-Korean teams to compete at the Tokyo 2020 Olympics. The president reiterated his administration's unchanged commitment in resuming joint inter-Korean economic projects that had been held back due to U.S.-led international sanctions crippling the regime over its nuclear weapons and missiles program. Although an imminent response from the North seemed unlikely, especially with the regime having announced its new strategic weapon last week, President Moon stands firm that security on the Korean peninsula all depends on lowering tensions and vowed to keep up the work in facilitating nuclear talks between Pyongyang and Washington. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
President Moon's national security chief is heading to Washington for talks with his American and Japanese counterparts on the rising threats posed by North Korea, as well as other issues of mutual concern. According to sources, Chung Eui-yong is scheduled to arrive in Washington on Wednesday local time to meet Robert O'Brien and Shigeru Kitamura. It's likely they'll also discuss the sharp uptick in tensions between Washington and Tehran. The meeting also shows that three-way security cooperation is back on, since Seoul decided to temporarily suspend its decision to withdraw from GSOMIA, its military intel sharing pact with Tokyo. In his first on-site visit of the year, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un went to a fertilizer factory under construction, where he emphasized his drive to achieve a self-reliant economy that can withstand the crushing economic sanctions on the regime. In a report Tuesday, the North's state-run Korean Central News Agency quoted Kim as stressing that the construction of the factory in Suncheon, north of Pyongyang, was one of the North's most important projects. Observers say the move was also a way for Kim to show confidence as leader amid speculation among South Korean media outlets that he might not appear in public as much after the U.S. drone attack last week that killed Iran's top general. Now, another theme in President Moon's speech today for the new year was the economy. Addressing the nation, the president pledged to bring about clear changes, including an increase in exports and to strengthen the country's parts and materials industries so they can thrive despite Japan's export curbs. Our Park Hee-jun has the details.
President Moon Jae-in vowed to change the economy in a way that can be felt by the Korean people, mentioning the word economy 17 times in his New Year's address on Tuesday. He reaffirmed the goal of making South Korea one of the world's top 4 exporting nations by 2030, for which efforts will accelerate this year.
올해는 전체 수출액을 다시 늘리고 2030년 수출 세계 4강 도약을 위한 수출 구조 혁신의 속도를 내겠습니다.
President Moon highlighted how despite the U.S.-China trade dispute and the global economic downturn, Korea maintained the number 7 spot in exports. And even with a sharp cut in semiconductor prices, it saw an overall increase in exports, especially in electric cars, hydrogen cars, and biohealth. The president vowed to add new life to the economy through innovation. That will include the nurturing of the 3 major new industries: systems, semiconductors, biohealth, and future cars. And a solid foundation will be made for the 4th Industrial Revolution through expanded investment in 5G networks, data, and artificial intelligence. The president also gave much credit to how the country was able to achieve what was thought to be impossible, overcoming Japan's export restrictions.
일본의 수출 규제 조치에 대응하여 핵심 소재, 부품, 장비의 국산화에 기업과 노동계, 정부와 국민이 함께 힘을 모아서 아무도 흔들 수 없는 나라라는 목표에 온 국민이 함께했습니다. 수십 년 동안 못한 일이었지만 불과 반년 만에 의미 있는 성과를 이뤄냈습니다.
To further strengthen the industries affected by Japan's trade restrictions, President Moon says the government plans to invest over $1.8 billion in those industries, double what was spent last year. But he also expressed hopes of mending ties with Korea's close neighbor, saying bilateral relations will be able to advance rapidly if Tokyo withdraws the export measures. Park Hee-jun, Arirang News.
South Korea's current account surplus last November finally showed an increase compared to the same month a year earlier. The country's current account surplus in November came to $5.97 billion, the 7th straight month that it's seen a surplus. The surplus was up $840 million on year, partly due to a smaller deficit in services. But both exports and imports continued to fall by double digits compared to the same time the previous year on slowing global trade. The tensions between the U.S. and Iran have sent global oil prices soaring and have weakened the Korean won. In a meeting on the situation this morning, the Vice Minister of Finance said that while a prolonged crisis would pose risks for Korea, the impact in the short term will be limited. Kim Hae-sung reports.
The impact of escalating tensions between Washington and Tehran on South Korea's oil supply will be limited in the short term. That's what First Vice Finance Minister Kim Yong-bum said in a meeting with economy-related vice ministers on Tuesday to assess the potential impact of the heightened tensions in the Middle East. He said Korea currently does not import crude oil from Iran and there has been no direct disruption to oil and gas facilities or oil tankers, so the oil supply to the country remains stable. Citing South Korea's resilient financial market after drone strikes on Saudi Arabia's oil processing facilities last September, he said local financial markets do not have to worry this time either. But the First Vice Finance Minister added that a prolonged crisis in the Middle East could result in a rise in market volatility and vowed to increase oil supply in case of a shortage and carry out the government's contingency plans. The combined oil reserves held by the South Korean government and local refineries came to 200 million barrels as of November 2019. The government has also vowed to increase safety measures for Koreans working in the Middle East and help protect shipping in the Strait of Hormuz. Kim Hae-sung, Arirang News.
Time now for an in-depth look at the global markets this afternoon, and for that I'm joined on the line by Mr. Daniel Yu, global strategist at Yuanta Securities. Mr. Yu, thank you as always for making time today.
Thank you very much for having me today.
So with the crisis in Iran, global oil prices are at an 8-month high. Gold also rising for several sessions in a row to a 6-year high. Tell us about the connection between the Iran situation and those commodities, and also your outlook.
Sure. As you said, the gold prices as well as the oil price were rising quite rapidly due to the geopolitical risk that occurred. However, though, if you look at the price trend, the gold price hit as high as $1588. Now it's back down to about $1560. The reason why the gold price rises is because when there is a risk of economic recession exists, and if there is additional liquidity provided by central banks, and also if the inflation pressures comes through, and that results into the oil price rises. However, though, if you look at the risk of recession, we think that that is quite low at this point in time. And also the government will continue to provide liquidity. And in terms of the inflationary numbers, it doesn't seem to be that risky except the oil price. If you look at the oil price, yes, the geopolitical risk is resulting into sharp rise as high as $65 territories, but now it's back down to about $62.5. Main reason for that is because of the shale gas additional supply that will come through. The rig counts should rise as the oil prices remain there well above $60 territories. So we think that all in all, yes, there is a risk and concern about the prices keep rising, but we think that the overall trend is not going to be any drastic move that will result into that kind of concern. If you look at the economic conditions globally, it seems to be in a positive direction. And we do think that economic growth of the U.S. should recover this year to probably well above 2% territories that we have seen in the last 2 quarters. And if that's the case, then yes, the gold price as well as oil price should remain where we are, but we don't think that it's going to be any higher than the current level. It should be able to stabilize in the future.
Right. Well, Wall Street was up on Monday, apparently unfazed by Iran's threat of revenge against America. What should investors be looking at in this kind of situation? And just take us through the global markets.
Sure. As you said, quite a lot of people were concerned about this geopolitical risk. And one of the major U.S. investment banks have said that it is time to just buy gold and buy into the safety, the assets. And also some analysts were saying that this uncertainty could cause equity market correction by as high as 6 to 7% for global scale. However, though, as you said, on yesterday's stock prices movement indicates that that's not going to be the case. We also have said that to the investor that we are not in a phase where we need to take profits on equities. We are actually rather saying that it is time to take profits on gold, silver, and oil. We've been saying that the oil price should rise to as high as $65 when the prices were around $55. But we don't think that it's going to go up any higher than that. And inflation should be in check. On also gold and silver prices not going to go up that much because we don't think that there is going to be any kind of economic recession. Now, if that's the case, then we think that commodity price should be stable, corporate profits should be okay, and valuation should continue to be cheap at the current point in time. We're particularly recommending that any correction that we see in the growth stocks, including the fourth industrial revolution related stocks, we think that those price corrections should be a very good opportunity for investors to buy into the weakness. We think that most of these growth stocks have at least 30 to 40% upside potential over the next 12 to 18 months. And therefore, we think that any correction that we see here, because of the geopolitical risk and the risk appetite being low, we are recommending that to be used as the opportunity to buy into the weakness.
Well, speaking of weakness, the Korean markets picking up from their declines yesterday, but still far behind other markets. What's the story there?
Sure. As you said, Kospi is one of the worst performing market year to date this year. It is down about 1.2%, whereas the best performing market is the China's Shenzhen index, which is up more than 3.5% year to date. Now, main reason for this is because of the foreign investors movement. We know that the MSCI index changes affects that where foreign investors continue to buy the China, whereas they're selling the Kospi somewhat. And if you look at the foreign investors' net selling, it continued until today. But today, they come back as buying about 128 billion won worth of Korean equities. And also they bought about 120 billion won worth of futures. That resulted into about 1% up of Kospi as well as Kosdaq. Now, we're still concerned about the Korea's long-term futures. With currently the government is much more focused on left-wing focused. And if you look at the earnings growth of the Korean companies, it seems to be quite timid. And also the corporate governance issue remains to be at risk. All that resulted into the negative sentiment for the Korean equity market. However, though, it is cheap market and P multiples at low teens. And also, if you look at price to book, it's at 0.8 times book. And also, we are expecting the earnings to recover in the future. So what that means is that Korean market should do okay this year, along with the global equity market. But in terms of the outperformance, we're not sure about that.
All right, Mr. Yu, we'll have to pick up those points again sometime soon. Thank you for sharing your insights today.
Thank you very much.
Now, in the UK, lawmakers are working on a bill to finalize Brexit by the end of this month. Then the UK and the European Union will have to work out a new trade deal. But that issue could take more than a year, as our Kim Bo-kyung reports.
On December 20th, the UK Parliament voted in favor of the withdrawal agreement bill. And now Brexit seems just around the corner. The House of Commons will debate the bill until January 9th. And after it passes through the House of Lords and gets loyal assent, Brexit will be final on January 31st. Afterwards, the UK will go through a transition period with EU to build a new relationship starting in March at the latest. The deadline for those negotiations is set for December 31st, but that deadline can be extended if the two parties decide on an extension before the end of June. Thus, there could be three possible scenarios by the end of the year: a deal between the UK and EU, an extension to the transition period, or a no-deal Brexit. Although UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson is firmly insisting that he won't prolong the transition period, one expert says it will be very challenging to meet the tight timetable.
Negotiations between UK and EU to forge a new economic and non-economic relationship will start in late February at the earliest. Since the ratification process will take at least 2 months, the UK has less than 10 months. Negotiation on new relations should be done by October this year. Canada and the EU took 5 years to strike their FTA. Even if the deal on good trade, in which the UK has a deficit, is struck in time, the deal on services, which is much more important to the UK, is not an easy issue to work on. So it will take at least 4 to 5 years.
If the transition period is not extended and new relationship is not formed between the two parties, the UK is expected to suffer greatly.
If the UK comes out of the EU without any deal, which is the so-called no-deal Brexit, the UK needs to trade with the EU through the rules of the World Trade Organization. Then, when Nissan or Toyota in the UK tries to export cars to the EU, they would have to pay 12.5% tax, unlike right now. This will lower the competitiveness of the UK products. Also, the UK won't be able to get information on refugees and terrorist suspects because it is only shared among EU member countries. This would be a great loss for UK intelligence.
The expert says it would be better for the UK to extend the transition period so that the country can be better prepared for future trade with the EU. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News.
Now back here in South Korea, a new weed killer developed by a local research team will soon be exported to the U.S., which happens to be the biggest weed killer market in the world. Jongun reports.
It's a massive headache for golf courses and those people who like to maintain an immaculate lawn. It's called Pua annua, otherwise known as annual bluegrass, and it hosts pathogenic bacteria that causes lawn diseases. It damages golf courses by causing healthy grass to die, making it look less pleasing to the eye. As it looks similar to normal grass and is classified as a plant, until now there had been no herbicide that selectively killed or controlled annual bluegrass. However, a research institute funded by the South Korean government and related businesses have co-developed a new chemical that kills annual bluegrass. Best of all, last month it was approved for commercial use in the United States by the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency.
This new herbicide perfectly controls bluegrass and doesn't harm other types of grass.
The first locally developed pesticide to be registered by EPA, methiazolin not only kills Pua annua, but it works effectively to reduce the negative impact on other cool season grasses. As it works gradually, it doesn't harm the aesthetic appeal of the fairway or lawn. Called Pua Cure in South Korea, the chemical has already posted sales of $13 million.
If it's used in the US, it's only a matter of time before it goes global. We expect it to enter Canada, Europe, and other markets and be successful in those places too.
The research team that developed the weed killer hopes it will eventually bring in sales of more than $40 million. 최정윤, Arirang News.
The world's biggest trade show for the tech industry kicks off on Tuesday in the U.S. But South Korean IT giants are already there trying to outdo one another with their latest devices. Our Oh Soo-young reports from Las Vegas.
The show hasn't started yet, but the battle of the screens has already begun. Ahead of the annual Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas, South Korea's tech giants have showcased their latest dazzling TV displays and smart home devices. LG on Monday revealed its new OLED TV screens, the industry's first to be certified as 8K Ultra High Definition. The TV runs on LG's own AI processor, which upscales video quality to 8K, recognizes and enhances video and audio quality by sharpening faces and text on screen. Samsung also revealed its own 8K lineup of thin micro-LED displays over the weekend. They come with similar AI features, but showcases the industry's first almost frameless display, a 99% screen-to-display ratio. Its lifestyle TV, called Seoul, meaning vertical in Korean, won the CES Innovation Award this year for its ability to rotate between the portrait and landscape modes in sync with your smartphone.
Samsung's Infinity screen was very impressive. They're really pushing the boundaries of design and really creating a product that blends into your environment rather than taking it over. I really like the LG Gallery television. I think it's very impressive. The OLED picture quality is remarkable, and the ability to display those amazing black levels, the compatibility with gaming devices as well. I think that's a really important feature as well.
So it's a net a competition between Samsung and LG this year to bring 8K for the masses. 8K TVs won't be as cheap or as affordable as 4K TVs this year. But of course, at the same time, this would help companies bring more innovations to the 8K world, as we already have 8K cameras.
In another face-off, both companies are expected to display their AI-equipped refrigerators that can identify the food inside it to draw up recipes and shopping lists. Robot chefs and cleaning devices are also part of each firm's smart connected home solution. It's hard to determine which Korean tech giant is coming out stronger, but what's certain is that both LG and Samsung are setting the standard high for connected AI-based home technology, which industry experts say will become the talk of this year's show. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News, Las Vegas.
And Samsung is aiming to lead the world into a new era of personalized technologies that enhance and connect all aspects of life. That's according to the tech giant's CEO of consumer electronics, Kim Hyun-suk, in a keynote speech delivered on the eve of CES in Las Vegas. Kim said Tuesday that 2020 will usher in an age of experiences where consumer tastes are shifting from products to memorable moments of convenience and enjoyment. Kim stressed the need to provide highly customized and seamless experiences by combining smart devices and artificial intelligence. As an example, he demonstrated a companion robot called Bali that follows the user around the home, helps with chores and personal wellness, and connects with other smart devices for convenience of use. At CES over the last 10 years, Samsung executives have given keynote speeches 4 times. And Hyundai Motor is developing a flying taxi for the U.S. ride-hailing company Uber. At CES on Monday, the South Korean carmaker unveiled a prototype for a personal air vehicle dubbed SA-1, designed for Uber's promised air taxi network. The electric-powered aircraft is ideal for use in cities, taking off and landing vertically, so it doesn't need a runway. It's also quieter than a normal helicopter. The Air Taxi will initially seat 5 people, including a pilot, but Hyundai aims to incorporate a self-driving system in the future. While no details have been released about the production date, Uber said it will commercialize the service in 2023. And that brings us to the end of this newscast. Thank you for watching. More live news coming your way at 7 p.m. Korea time.